Who here has heard of PowerShell Workflows?
This morning.
Other than this morning, who's heard of it, right? Quite a few. How many people have actually written one? This is awesome. I am totally going to blow your minds. Okay, so we're going to flip through this pretty quick. What is PowerShell Workflow? So when you run a PowerShell workflow, surprise, surprise, you're not actually in PowerShell. You're running off the Windows Workflow Foundation. They started to do, I'm going to call it an integration. That's probably not the proper term. That's what I'm going to call it, though. They started doing the integration in PowerShell 3. And in 4, they improved some of the functions, that, especially in parallel processing. And like Greg had mentioned earlier, when you're running a workflow, you're not running PowerShell commandlets, right? So commandlet would be something like get process, right? It's the verb noun, right? That what they've done is they've taken a bunch of the commandlets and they've made them into activities, and that's the terminology inside of a workflow as an activity. So, why do you want to use workflows? I'm only going to go pros on this, by the way, because there are cons to using workflows. But I'm just going to stick with pros for this presentation. It is familiar syntax if you're familiar with PowerShell. Now, everybody have a fairly decent understanding of PowerShell, right? We all know what it is. We all can get in there and cause some damage, right? Right? Enough to be dangerous? Yeah. Yeah, I think anybody, I think, is pretty much enough to be dangerous in PowerShell, right? But it's familiar syntax. It's that verb-noun syntax, the get process, the start process, the invoke command, right? It's all that, right? Why you want to use the workflows part 2? Parallel processing. That is the biggest one that I've found so far. It is magnificent. I have, as an example, I have a workflow that runs inside of GM, runs nightly, runs at 1 a.m., 10,000 servers, roughly 9,800 servers that it's interrogating. It runs 4 commands on each box. Each command takes 1 minute, right? Because it's a piece of crap HP software that we're interrogating. But each command takes 1 minute, roughly.
Is that mic on?
It better be, I hope so. It takes 1 minute, 10,000 machines. I can do them all in a little over 4 hours. Every single box, every single night, a little over 4 hours. That's impressive. Yeah, it's pretty intensive. And I'm running it on a 2008 R2 server with 8 gig of RAM, and 4 processors. Just bust right through it, not a problem. Workflows are stoppable and restartable. When you run a workflow, you get this, and we'll go into it a little later, you get this ability to checkpoint. And it can be automatic checkpointing, you can be very explicit about it, but you can basically say, after you run this command, checkpoint. PowerShell will take that workflow, take the status of it, write it out to a file. You can literally power the box off while it's running this workflow. Power it back on, do a quick import command, start that job right back up where it left off. Has all the data it needs, and we'll keep going. So very, very nice. And of course, the stoppable, restartable, and failure recovery, they all kind of go together. So those are the big reasons. How do you get it? You need PowerShell 3.0 or better, right? I always say 4. It's out, it's good, there's nothing wrong with it. You can install it on practically everything. I even have it on this Windows 7 box. You build a workflow just like you build a PowerShell function. And if you don't know how to build a PowerShell function, don't worry, I'll show you in a second. It's super easy, super easy. And then you use the activities in the workflow. Okay? And I'll demonstrate that. So, let me jump over here to, where's my mouse? Oh, did he close down? Oh, no, he didn't. Okay. All right. You know what? Let me zoom in. I will do that. Is that too? What is it? No, I don't have Zoom it. I thought about it, but I forgot about it. this might be a little difficult to see, but essentially this is a normal PowerShell script. Yeah, you want to highlight? Make it a little easier. Oh, you know what? It might be better if I... Somebody kill the lights, and I'm going to go to the...
All right, let's play a game. Which switch is it?
The one that uses the one outside.
Yeah. Is there a switch for that? Well, I think this one.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah? All right. Everybody get comfortable. Stool up. Okay, so this is a very straightforward little PowerShell script, right? All it's doing is declaring a variable that says it's an array. So I'm saying the numbers array goes from 1 to 10, and then for each instance in that array, I'll set it and print out whatever number you're on at the time, right? So if I run this, what the heck is that?
Awesome.
Is it highlighting it? Cause
Yeah, it is. It's the other color.
oh, that is annoying.
That's awesome.
You should change the default colors.
Ah, you are so blessed that you didn't use a PowerShell script to change it.
Oh yeah, I know, right? Dark console light editor. What about this one?
There we go.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right, there we go. All right, so as we imagined, it took about 10 seconds to run this script, right? Because all it did was count to 10, essentially, with a 1 second pause in between. Okay? And this is slow. We understand that. You define this is a workflow. And you see that when you define a workflow, you start with the word workflow. Pretty straightforward. Now, you can call it whatever you want. I'm trying to be good and follow the verb noun, nomenclature. But this could be, Chris sucks, right? You could be anything, right? But it's workflow, a name, and then Chris will fix it. And then brackets, right? Brackets. That's it. And then you can just call it, right? So I'm just clearing the screen first. I'm doing the same thing that I did in the other one, except this time I'm going to 100, right? Otherwise, it's the same script. Okay. Now, there's a couple of things that I want you to point out here. That did not take 100 seconds. We know that, right? In fact, I will tell you that it only took 1 second. But the display on this wonderful laptop cannot refresh fast enough to display the numbers. Second thing that happened, they're not in order, right? Because it didn't do them in order. It didn't do them in sequence. It did them in parallel, right? And I can prove that. I can prove the timing if I change it. Why is that not? Oh yeah. I can prove this. Let me go back to the second one because I didn't realize that I wasn't showing you that. When you call a workflow, so you can see that I defined the workflow here. I defined the workflow by saying workflow, here's what it is, put the script between the brackets. To call the workflow, you call it just like you do a function. In other words, you just put the command there and boom, it does whatever it's supposed to. Okay? Now, on this one, all I'm doing is put a measure command around it because I want to show you the amount of time that it actually takes, right? I'm going to take my crappy laptop display out of it and the processing power that goes along with that, right? And it takes 1 second. 1 second to count to 100. Yeah. It's one. Okay? It's 1 freaking second. But that's how long it took in order to do that, right? And that's pretty straightforward, right? Now, there's some caveats here. I said go to 1 to 100. So guess what? 100 parallel processes started up. Okay? 100 PowerShell sessions did not spawn, but it opened essentially, if you want to think of it, it's not threads, I don't know what the proper terminology is, but essentially it did them all at the same time, right? If I put 1,000 there and tell it to do them all, it will hurt my machine, okay? It will pause for I think when I tested it, it probably paused for 15 seconds, 20 seconds before it started to throw all that stuff out, okay? But in PowerShell 4, which is why I'm telling you to go to 4, they give us a way to deal with this. For each parallel, throttle it. So I'm throttling to 20, okay? So if I'm counting to 100 and I'm throttling to 20, how long is this command going to take?
5 seconds.
5 seconds. All right, that's what we expect. Math is power.
I'm told there would be no math.
No, I was told there would be no math. And indeed, we see that it's 5 seconds, right? So you can limit it that way. You can cut yourself down. In PowerShell 3, I believe that the limit is 5. You're not going to get above that. 5 throttles, right? In 4, you can go as high as you want. You're only limited by the power of your machine at that point, okay? And you will break a machine doing it. So just keep that in mind. So what can you do all I did there was count, right? That's super easy, right? What can you do? You can run activities. That's it. That's what you can do. You can run activities. A lot of the commandlets have been converted over. I mentioned that, right? They've been made into activities. They're not really commandlets anymore, right? There are some activities that you specifically cannot do, and we'll go over those. I'll show you a couple examples. But there's ones that they just no, you're not going to do it. You can't do it. It'll throw an error. It won't even compile the workflow, right? And then there's a few specific new activities that have been added just for workflows. Okay. This is an eye chart, and it's supposed to be. These are the things that you can't do. These are the ones that are expressly forbidden. They're in the terms of service. You cannot write host.
TS session? No remote. Is that the second one?
You cannot, where is it? You cannot enter a PowerShell session. You can't exit a PowerShell session. You can't deal with PowerShell sessions. You cannot set variable. You cannot set a variable. Now, I'm going to show you how to cheat the system in a minute, but this is what you can't do. We're going to post this up so you guys can see this on the site. If you don't have to memorize these right now, there will not be a test. Okay? But as you can see, there's quite a few. The new specific activities, checkpointing. This is what I was talking about with the recovery. For each parallel, that's going to be your best friend when you're using workflows, right? That's the one that I did for my sleeps, for the little sample scripts. There is specifically, once you're in a workflow, and I don't know why they did this. This is annoying. Parallel and sequence. Those are the actual commands. They don't follow the verb-noun nomenclature, right? But there's parallel and sequence. We'll go over those. And then suspend workflow. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, right? So let's go back over, 5 through 8. All right. This is a good workflow. I think it's pretty simple, right? All we're doing is getting the process. And if you run it, it returns my PowerShell process that's running right now. Okay? A bad workflow. Remember, write host is specifically forbidden, right? Boom. You can't read that, but it's a giant PowerShell error message. Okay? And essentially what it says is there'll actually be 2 error messages. There's only one here, but there would be 2. The first error message would be, I can't compile this workflow because write host is specifically forbidden. That's essentially what the error message says. If I had another command here that called that workflow, I would actually get an error message that said, I don't know what this workflow is, because it couldn't compile it, so it doesn't know how to call it. It doesn't even know what it is. Okay? So you actually get 2 error messages. I only got 1 because I didn't actually try to call it. Okay? Write host, set variable, all the PowerShell session stuff, none of that will work. So, I want to show you. Let's see. You know what? I'm going to get rid of this. I want to show you how you call a workflow with a parameter, right? Because it's just like a function. When you define a function, you can tell the function that it's going to have parameters. In other words, it's going to take input from something. It's going to do something with that input, and it's going to spit out some data. This is very simple. I define the workflow just like I normally do, except I put this at the top. There's going to be a parameter coming in called computer, right? This is what you're going to, inside the workflow, this is what you're going to call to get that variable, right? When you call it, you don't need to like put dash computer if you don't want to, right? There's multiple parameters than you do, but right now you don't have to worry. I'm just calling it directly, okay?
Call a workflow from the workflow.
I will get to that. The answer is yes, but there's some caveats with that. It is, and actually PowerShell is smart enough to not let you shoot yourself in the foot. All I'm doing here is I'm assigning a variable, and I'm doing a supported activity called test connection. This is actually a commandlet that they've converted into a PowerShell activity. Test connection, the computer, quiet, and count 1, right? So in other words, don't give me all the crap. It's just like a ping, right? But just tell me yes or no, and try it once. If the connection's good, get the PowerShell process information from it, okay? Pretty straightforward. And then I call it, just like I do a function, workflow, and that happens to be my computer name. And then, where did it go? I wonder if it doesn't, yeah, it doesn't like, what's going on here? All right. All right, so that was it running. I apologize, I'm not sure why. I don't think it likes to off the corporate network. I'm not sure why it's not resolving its own name, but I just did localhost. I did the same thing, right? Localhost gives me the information. Pretty straightforward, right? And then the last one in this is same function. You can just specify multiple targets with a comma, right? So you can do your machine, your machine, your machine, your machine, your machine, do them all. Run them all. They will all run at the same time. And I think it's going to get pissy, yeah. So let me, yeah, it's a DNS thing, so. Let me just change it real quick. What's that? I'm typing localhost in. No, it's the name of my workflow. So this was all it did was I typed it in 4 times. It went and got that information 4 times. Again, I'm limited because of what I'm working with here. But if I put in 100 machines, it would go out to all 100 of them, get the process information, assuming you have rights and all that crap, right? So pretty straightforward. Now I'm going to tell you how to cheat the system, because there are a lot of things that you really, really, really want to do with workflows that you can't because they're not activities, right? You cheat the system by using something called inline script. And inline script is essentially, it's just a activity that you call, and it's inline script, bracket, whatever you want to do, bracket. That's it, right? And you can do whatever you want inside of that inline script within reason. Like, for example, you still can't write host. Even in inline script, you can't write host. But you can do a lot more. There is a gotcha with inline script. Okay? Say I declared a variable called, I don't know, variable A. Okay? I have variable A that I've called Donnie, right? And then I do an inline script, and I want to, I don't know, do something with that variable inside the inline script. I can't. because it's declared outside of the inline script. But you can get to it if you do this. Using, and then the variable name. And I got an example of this, so for sure.
Does that allow you to get the variables that are only in the parent scope?
Only in the parent scope.
You get to the global.
No, no. If you wanted to get global, I think you'd have to use a global. And then even inside of the inline script, I think you still have to use using. So we'll go back to this one real quick. This isn't going to work. Why is this not going to work? Set variable is explicitly forbidden. It's in the list, right? This isn't going to work. Remember how I told you that if you screw up a workflow, you'll get 2 errors? It's tough to tell here, but trust me, there's 2 errors. This error says I couldn't compile the workflow because you tried to do a set variable and that's not allowed. This one says I don't even know what the heck that is because the workflow didn't compile. So, pretty straightforward. But if I do an inline script, this is the same thing as set variable, by the way. Right? That's all this is, set variable. If I do an inline script, I get access to more commands that way. But I'm going to have 2 variables that are outputted here when I run this, right? I'm going to have A0 and A1, right? And I'm attempting to set both of those to this, to 3. Okay? This one will not work because it's in an inline script. It doesn't know what A is. Even though I just declared it right here inside the inline script, I don't know what A is. If I do using, however, I can get to it. So if I run this, just like I said, A0, nothing. It's null.
So in the first one, if you were to declare another A to be like 5, it would print out 5.
If I did that in here,
Yeah.
if I did it inside the inline script, it would be 5.
And then the next one would be 3.
Yep.
That could be fun troubleshooting.
Yeah, you can really, like I said, you can really shoot yourself in the foot if you're not careful. Okay. I don't think. No.
What if you were to set a variable in the inline script? Do you have the ability to pass it back up to the parent scope?
So the inline script will pass data back, but if you define it inside the inline script, you will not. Now the thing about inline script is when you fire up an inline script, you're actually spawning a PowerShell session. PowerShell session. Swear I'm not drunk.
Yeah.
Yet. So when you do that inline script, you're going to spawn PowerShell.exe, okay? And it will run whatever's in that script. There is a hard limit of 5 extra PowerShell sessions on your machine. I've done everything I can, everything imaginable to try to get more than 5, okay? But if you try to do more than 5, it will hard limit to 5. You can look it up, you can pull it up in Task Manager and see, well, there's the one I'm running it from, right? And there's 5 extra. That's all you're ever going to get. And that's PowerShell 4, PowerShell 3, Server 2008 R2, 2012, doesn't matter. That's what you're going to get. Right? Now, if you do activities only and not an inline script, you're not limited to 5. Okay, checkpoints. These are a little weird. Essentially, when you're inside of a workflow, you have the ability to take all of the job information about that workflow and write it out to a file on the system. When you write it out to a file on the system, you can kill the machine, you can break it, you can do whatever, it'll still be there. Information will still be there, and you can get it back. There's 3 ways to do it. There's 4 ways to do it. Okay? First one is checkpoint workflow. You just put that anywhere in your workflow, and it doesn't tell you anything. It just checkpoints the workflow, writes that information out to a file. So that's a manual way. Inside of a workflow, on any activity, any valid activity inside that workflow, you can put -ps persist at the end. It's a parameter, right? And that will checkpoint after that activity, okay? Or if you put PS persist on the workflow itself when you start it, it'll checkpoint after everything in that workflow, which is kind of nice, right? You don't have to do anything at that point. Or if you're really, really lazy, you set this variable, PS persist preference, to true, I believe. Yeah, set it to true. Any activity, any workflow, until that variable is set to false, will checkpoint. So it's fire and forget, right? You put it at the top of your script, kick it off, and that's it.
Donnie,
Mhm.
what kind of file is it and how big is it?
You know, I haven't looked it up. I don't know. I honestly, I don't even know where it is. So,
Do you normally use one of these?
no. No.
All his stuff just works.
No, it doesn't. Now I want to tell you the truth. Remember I told you how when you spawn an inline script, it spawns an actual PowerShell.exe, right? And you're hard limited to 5 of those. Well, the thing that I'm doing with the 9,000 machines, right? That 5 limit's not going to work for me. So I actually built another function that multi-threads PowerShell, but doesn't use workflows. So I kind of lied earlier. But I started out building it as a workflow until I found out that inline script will only let you spawn 5. So I do have a couple other scripts that run this guy, that run workflows, and I haven't really gotten into checkpoints yet. Like I said, all my stuff is running on a server in the data center, so I normally don't have to worry about it going down or being rebooted or anything like that. All right, this is the fun one, because I got to remember all my commands. All right, so I'm going to shrink this down so we can see it all. All I'm going to do, defining a workflow, while true, all I'm saying is just run, right? True is always true, so it won't ever stop, essentially. So just run perpetually. Take your last number and increment it by 1, and then print it out. That's all. And then after each one, I want you to checkpoint. Right? I want you to checkpoint the workflow after each run. Okay? So we're going to do, what's going on? Oh, did I just type in there? Crap. Well, let's see if I typed in there. I'm not sure I did. What is it? Start checkpoint. What's the name of it? Start checkpoints. Now, in order to properly do the checkpointing, you have to run it as a job. PowerShell jobs kind of run in the background, right? In order for the checkpoints to work, though, you have to run it as a job. So you just do as job at the end of the workflow. Okay? Let's see if I actually typed in that window without meaning to. Oops. All right. So this guy's running now. It's running in the background right now. And it's incrementing that number over and over and over again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get the current status of it, right? I do that with get job 24. I believe I don't need to put anything there. No. Oh, right. It will be by now, yeah. So, and if I keep hitting F5 and I don't mean to. So we can see that this guy is continually running in the background, right? All I'm doing is getting that same job over and over again to find out what it's doing, right? And so we're going to let this run for a second, because I want it to get sufficiently big before I show you what I'm going to do. So. It's probably good. Probably over 1,000 by now. No, not yet. Wait for it to get to 1,000. You can see that it takes a minute or two for it to get there, right? Okay. Now, I just closed PowerShell. Okay? If I was really a glutton for punishment, I'd just turn my machine off. I'd yank the battery, right? But we just had a failure, in other words. PowerShell just crashed. Whatever. Open PowerShell back up. I have to run, oh, I gotta wait for it to load. I had this new add-on for the PowerShell ISE, and it actually causes the PowerShell ISE to take longer to load. It's kind of annoying. It's running a script right now. We'll let it load them. Oh, come on. It was something I got off of TechNet. It was a thing that's supposed to parse your scripts and, yeah, parse your scripts and do all that. It takes for freaking ever. All right. Script browser and script analyzer, that's what it is anyway. All right, so PS Workflows. You have to import this module in order to get the jobs back. If I was to try to list the jobs that are running right now, I wouldn't see my PowerShell. I wouldn't see my workflow module. I wouldn't see my workflow job. If I import this, I believe it's plural. If I import this, then I can see the job. It's not plural. Singular. So now I've imported that. PowerShell is now aware of workflows again. If I do a get job, oh, look, it's the one I was running before, right? So it's suspended. If I do a start job 3, so I'm going to start this job back up, right? It's not start job, it's resume, thank you. Resume job 3. Okay, now it's running again. And if I do it quickly, you see we're over 1,200. What that's proving is I didn't restart the process again because it would have taken forever to get over 1,000. It's just starting where it left off. So it checkpointed, we had a catastrophic failure, and we recovered with 2 commands. So now I'm going to stop this before it crashes this laptop. Okay.
Does the memory footprint increase as you're running the job in the background? It shouldn't.
No, because it's pretty fire and forget. You know, all it's doing is incrementing the variable. So, okay, the 2 oddball commands are parallel and sequence, and I say they're oddball because they don't follow the proper naming convention. They're not verb noun, right? It's just parallel and sequence. Huh? They're adjectives. It's a combination, right? All it allows you to do is to put a little bit of structure around the wild, wild west that is the workflow, inside of the workflow, right? If you want stuff to run parallel, you type parallel, you put a bracket, whatever you want to run parallel, and you close the brackets. That's it. It's really, really simple. Sequence is interesting because there's only one time you're going to use sequence. It's when you've already used parallel. Right? I want to run this stuff in parallel, except for this one little section that it has to run in order. And then you do sequence, bracket, whatever you want to run in order, close the bracket. That's it. It's very straightforward. Otherwise, you don't need it, because it's just going to run in sequence anyway. That's the way PowerShell works. It runs from the top down, right? So let me flip back over to that, and I'll load my script again. So what I'm doing here is I have a PowerShell workflow that's going to get process, it's going to get the computer system information, it's going to get the system enclosure information, it's going to get the disk drive, it's going to list all the jobs that are running, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Because I put it in parallel here, in this parallel block, if you will, I can't control the order in which these will run. But I can guarantee, since this is in sequence, I'll always count to 6 or whatever it is in order. All right? So if I run this, let's see. Let's see. Oh, did it? I'm trying to prove to you that it is not running in order. Okay, there you go. You see this? This is, it was doing all these other things, but you see how this one is kind of out here by itself? This is actually the counting going on, right? It ran everything in parallel, including that sequence block. But inside that sequence block, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it did those in order. Okay? But everything else, just whichever responded first, that's what gets printed first.
What if you did a parallel inside of a sequence inside of a parallel? I'm just thinking about the
Yeah, yeah, it's like is the top still spinning, right? I don't know that you can put a parallel. Maybe you could put a parallel inside of a sequence.
We want to.
There might be. I mean, at that point, you're getting pretty deep into it, though. I mean, you might want to reevaluate your place in life if you're doing that.
Yeah, it's a college class usually.
Yeah, exactly. So that is it. That's all I got on workflows. Okay. Any questions? Any comments?
Where do you get a list of activities? Because you were saying that.
Oh, that's a great question.
So,
I don't know. I must have spent probably 2 hours trying to find an actual definitive list,
Yeah.
and I couldn't find it.
So, and,
I resorted to using Bing
yeah, totally.
to try to find it. I couldn't find it.
tweet at Jason over.
Yes, that would probably be the best idea,
Actually,
right?
and then you
Just
can blog it, and then you have like the
Exactly.
blog posts of all time.
exactly. Sorry, go ahead.
So why not just use
Or
invoke?
whatever it is.
What's that?
Why not just use invoke command instead of using invoke?
So invoke command is an activity. They've actually taken invoke command and they've made it into a workflow activity. So you can use that inside of a workflow. Invoke command. I'm trying to think. I think if you use invoke command, you're still going to hit that five processing limit, unless you do it in a workflow. You see what I mean? So if you didn't use workflows at all and you did invoke command, and you invoke command on other machines or whatever, right? You can do it on yourself, but if you did it on other machines, right? Say I did 7 invoke commands at a remote machine and told it to run whatever, it'll only do 5 of those at a time, right? It'll queue up the rest. They'll run. It's just it's going to do them in blocks of 5. If you do it in a workflow, you're fine. It'll do however many you want. Make sense?
Yes.
You're skeptical. What?
No, I can call one script block, right, and run all those 5 commands.
Yes. Yes, you can do, yeah, if you do invoke command and you do the script block and you put it in there, right? You can run all those commands. That's perfectly fine. But they won't run in parallel, right? They'll run in order. If you do a normal invoke command, they'll run in order, whatever order you list them in. And if you were to somehow, which is what I'm doing in another thing, if you were to use jobs and like invoke multiple of those on a remote machine, for example, you're going to be limited to 5. You're only going to get 5 PowerShell.exes out of it, and then after that you're done. So workflows are a little bit better for the simple things that it can do. Any of the activities that it's got built in, that's when you want to use workflows. So get process, right? For example, test connection. Simple things that you need to do in bulk, that's when you want to use workflows. If you're going to be doing a lot of more complex stuff, where you need like inline scripts, if you're going to be doing invoke command with a giant script block, you might want to try and find a different way to do it, because you're going to hit that 5 processing limit pretty fast, especially with inline script.
So it seems like you're choosing one way or the other, either the PowerShell or the workflows, and you're kind of matching it to what you're doing. And
Yeah, workflows are not an end-all be-all by any stretch of the imagination. But what they do, what they are good at, they're really, really good at. Otherwise, they suck.
If I remember correctly, Orchestrator can call workflows, but you can't call an orchestrator from a workflow. Or do I have that backwards? Because it's one of the biggest problems with Orchestrator is it has no checkpoints in its own.
Right. Because that's why they always tell you to put that other database in place and write all your job history to a database. And
But even then, you're still screwed.
yeah. So I don't know what the rules are about that. However, SMA doesn't have that problem. SMA, Service Management Automation, it's built off of Service Manager and the Windows Azure pack. It's really neat. If you guys haven't seen it, we'll show it to you guys at some point if you haven't installed it already. But it's really neat. It uses workflows. That's what it's all built off of, is workflows. And of course, it's all server-based. Lets people go to their nice Service Manager portal, kick off a workflow. Looks neat, runs fast. So.
What kind of overhead have you seen checkpoint?
You know, I haven't messed with checkpointing a whole lot to tell you what the overhead's going to be. I do know there is a file, right?
I would dig in while you were doing it. It's stuffed in local web data, and there's this directory with a bunch of XML files, and it looked like I ran that counting thing that you did. After I got up to about 1,500, there was about 7 or 8 kilobytes of XML.
Oh, so not much then.
Yeah, but for a number.
Yeah, for a simple number, right? And so it's not just writing like the variable information, it's writing all of the metadata around the job that it's running as well.
For each line of command.
Uh-huh.
It took you a long time to count to 1,000 ones. That just the crappy HP machine or the checkpoint? Yes.
Well, it was.
Yes.
It was also. It wasn't a parallel.
Yeah, it was actually counting it in order.
Count.
Yeah, that was actually counting in order. If I put that in a parallel block, it'd look a lot different.
1 through 100 parallel go.
So the thing is sequential, that took a long time.
Yeah, and I don't know what's causing that. I didn't notice that when I was building it too. I would assume that the checkpointing does. I mean, it's writing to a file, right? So there's going to be some overhead associated with that. But
Probably depends on just how much you're doing.
yeah, exactly. How much metadata it has to write. That was, elementary what it was having to write. So
It's Ramsey's keylogger.
go for it.
This will upload of all kinds from Donnie's laptop.
That pop-up was?
Not with this wireless.
You poor bastard. Any other questions, comments? I would highly recommend. Yeah.
Can the workflow call another workflow?
Oh yeah. Sorry, I meant to talk about this. Yes, it can. It can call another workflow. However, so say that you have. Imagine with me, if you will, you have a workflow, and you have a parallel block inside that workflow, and you call 5 other workflows inside of that. Okay. It will, in parallel, call those 5 other workflows, and it'll spawn it, and it'll run, and it'll do all of that. However, if you have an inline script in each one of those, right, because it starts PowerShell.exe, it'll only do 5 at a time.
Does it just sit there and wait until one of them becomes available and
Uh-huh.
continue on?
Yep.
So it will queue.
Oh yeah. It doesn't just ignore them or drop them. It just will only do 5 at a time. However, if you have no inline scripts, and you have no crazy stuff in a script block in invoke command, it'll do all of them in parallel up to your throttle limit. And if you don't have a throttle limit, it'll just do them all. So, yeah, you can have a workflow call 100 other workflows. So, and you can keep going too. The thing that you will have to do, you'll have to keep in mind is that when you start getting down into nested workflows like that, it gets more and more difficult to call variables further down in, right? So you want to use global. And I haven't tested that. I'm not sure if global will even get you around that. So you can also, all those workflows can have parameters, right? So when you call the other workflow, you can just pass any information you need to. Yeah.
What about returning data from workflow?
Oh, well, I did the whole time that I was there. When you return data, you just print it out. So
Like, I guess, can you take, just like a function, I'm assuming you can take output from it and assign it to another object?
yeah, so I could have easily said, $Donnie equals start counter workflow, right? And it'll just return. It'll actually return this each time because I'm specifically calling that out. If I ran that, you remember when I ran that, it actually counted down, right? Or this was not this one, but if I just ran start count workflow, you see the numbers print out. That's what would get returned and assigned to that variable. So getting data out of it's just like anything else, PowerShell. Any other questions? No? I encourage you to use them and have fun with them. Like I said, they will drop your machine pretty hard, pretty fast if you spawn 1,000 or 10,000 or something, right? It does not seem to care about thread limit or like cores or processing or anything like that. It just runs, right?